Greetings, college trigonometry students. In the next part, part 4 of this section, we're going to look at trig functions and how you determine their value at quadrantal angles. Okay, so quadrantal angles are just going by 90-degree increments, 0, 90, 180, 270. You could also, of course, have negative angles as well. And in radians, you remember we talked in an earlier video about you just count out by the numerator, 0 pi, 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, but you reduce fractions. So you get this family of angles, 0 pi over 2 pi, and so forth, okay? So if we're going to find the value of a trigonometric function at a quadrantal angle, you need to reason out what x, y, and r are equal to, because that's what it's all about. In general, you can pick any number for r, but I just always pick 1. I don't pick 0, but keep it simple and just pick 1, okay? And what you'll find on the unit circle is you can figure these points out real easily. If the radius is equal to 1, then that's going to make this point become 1, 0. This point will be 0, 1. This point will have a negative x value because you're going to the left. And this point here will have a negative y value because you're going down. So you don't have to memorize those points. You just reason them out anytime that you need them. But you'll see me just choosing r equal to 1. Okay, next page, we'll go ahead and take a look at this now. So again, what we're doing is we're just considering r is equal to 1. And for each angle, what we're going to do is just figure out what the trig function is. So the first problem, we know that a sine is y over r. So if we're at 90 degrees, then we are at this point right here. So what that's going to mean is y is 1. So we'll end up getting the answer of 1 over 1 since r is 1. So the sine of 90 degrees is equal to 1. Just reason out what x, y, and r are is when you do this then. Okay, we go to this next one. The tangent, its definition is y over x. 3 pi over 2. And again, you could convert this to degrees if you wanted to just by doing 3 times 180 over 2. And if you do that, you're going to get 3 times 90 is 270. Or you can just learn to count out the pi over 2. Pi over 2 is 90, so you'd have 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, and then 3 pi over 2 down here. So again, you just look at the point. Okay, the x value is 0, the y value is negative 1. So we would do negative 1 over 0, and it turns out that sometimes trig functions are undefined. You can't divide by 0, so that is undefined. So there is no value of a tangent of 3 pi over 2. When we start learning about graphing, that will have a special meaning on the graph of that function. Okay, so now let's see. Moving on, we got the secant of 2 pi now. Okay, so 2 pi, again, if you're not real clear about where these radian things lie, then just, convert it to degrees if that's what's helpful to you at this stage. Okay, so 2 pi would just be counterclockwise all the way around the circle. That would lead you to this point right here. The secant's definition is r over x. So in this case, r is 1, and the x value is going to be 1. So the secant of 2 pi is going to be equal to 1. Okay, all right, next one, we have cosecant of negative 180. So that means we're going clockwise 180 degrees, so that will leave us at this point. And the definition of cosecant is r over y. So again, we are choosing r to be 1. The y value would be 0. So once again, this would be another example of one that is undefined. Okay. All right. Sometimes you'll have to work with some coterminal angles. So on 450 degrees, if you subtracted 360 from that, then you would get 90 degrees. So we're really doing the cosine of 90 degrees. Okay, so that means we would just go like this. This is the point we would be at. The cosine is x over r. So in this case, x is 0, r is 1. So 0 over 1 would be 0. So cosine of 450 is equal to 0. Okay, and then one last one. Let's look at a cotangent. Cotangent's definition is x over y. Pi over 2 is 90 degrees, so you would be clockwise because this is a negative angle. So that would put you at this particular point. And in this case, you get x is 0, y is -1. So you would do 0 over -1 to get 0. One of the things that you're going to find when you do a trig function at a quadrantal angle, you're only going to get these answers. You might get 0, 1, or -1, or you might get undefined. You're going to get that every time you do a quadrantal angle. It's the way the ratios work out, regardless of what you choose for r, okay? And one thing I want you to notice is if you choose r equals 4, then, your points would just then be 4, 0, 0, 4, and so forth. The ratios are all still going to work out, but there's no point in doing that. Just for simplicity speaking, just pick one. Okay, so I'm going to have you go ahead and move down to the next problem, pause the video, and work these problems out. And then when you're done, check and see if you got those right. Okay, so if you want to check your answers, you can do that. So I'll go over them. If you got them all right, you can move ahead if you want to. The tangent's y over x. So if we're at 0 degrees, we're just looking at this point. So the y value is 0, r is 1. Remember I said just choose r to be equal to 1. So you get 0 over 1. Cosine of pi would put you, pi is 180 degrees, it puts you there. So x is -1, r is 1, so you get -1. Sine of negative pi over 2 would take you to -90, bringing you to this point. The y value is -1, so y over r would be -1 over 1. So again, that would be -1. Notice your answers are always turning out to be one of those four things too. Okay, 4 pi. Well, 2 pi is 1 revolution because 2 pi is 360. So 4 pi is 2 revolutions, that's 720. So you end up here, and if you're doing the cotangent, you're doing x over y. So x is 1, y is 0, so you end up with something that's undefined. Okay, next one is -270. Just count it out. That would be -90, -180, -270. Puts you at this point. So if you do r over x, which is the definition of the secant, you would have 1 over 0. So that one is also undefined. And then the last one would be the cosecant. Cosecant of 90 would put you at this same point. So the y value is 1. So r over y, 1 over 1 would be 1 like that. Okay, so like I say, when you do a quadrantal angle, you're going to find that you either get a 0, you get a +1, a -1, or they're going to be undefined. Nothing else will happen. Okay, hopefully that went well for you. So now we'll move to the next page. Just do a few observations to wrap this up. This will be a fairly short video instruction of this. Okay, so just a couple of things on this. The sine and cosine are never undefined. And the reason for that is the sine of theta is x over r. Gosh, teacher. Y over r. Come on, professor. I'm recording this at like 6:30 in the morning. That's my excuse. Cosine of theta is x over r. So the thing is, r could always be any positive number, and you can just choose r equals 1. X and y always have values. And because r will never be 0, that means that you're always going to get an answer to a sine and cosine. Okay? Other things are the cosecant, secant, tangent, and cotangent can be undefined at certain quadrantal angles. So it's kind of helpful to be able to figure this out. So I'm going to show you how you can reason this out in your head. So let's start with the tangent. Okay, the tangent is y over x. So the question becomes, we can't have a 0 denominator, so we have to ask our question, where is x equals 0? And if you just kind of think of a circle here, you would have two places. You would have 0, 1, and then you would have this point 0, -1. That will be two places where x is 0. Now we could do this in degrees or radians. It doesn't make any difference. I'm just going to do this in degrees. So that would be 90 degrees. this would be 270 degrees, and it would keep going on and on forever. And it's going to go every 180 degrees. So if you're at 270 and go another 180, you're going to end up at the next place where that thing is undefined, which would be 450 degrees. And that will go on forever and ever. You can also look at, negative angles. So you would have negative 90, and it would follow the same pattern, and negative 270, and so forth, like that. You could do that in radians. If you did that in radians, it would be like pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. And you'll notice a pattern on this. You'll have an odd pi over 2. Okay, math is full of patterns. These things have got all kinds of patterns to them. Okay. All right, so that's how you would reason that out. Let's look at the cotangent. So again, it's all about knowing the definitions. One thing's always liked about trig is the definitions can help you figure out so many things. You don't have to memorize that many things if you understand the definitions and what they're doing. So really in this problem, it's okay, we can't have a zero denominator, so the question is, where is y zero? So you reason this out the same way. You can even reason this out in your head if you want to. There's two places that happens. One of them would be 0 degrees, where you have y is 0. The other place would be at 180 degrees, where you have negative 1, 0. Okay, and again, you're going to follow a nice predictable pattern on this. You're going to have 0 degrees, 180 degrees, and then, you just keep going around the circle. You'd be 360. It's going to go by 180 degree increments forever, and then you can go clockwise, so you can get this same pattern like that. Okay, so that's how that goes, and it just goes on forever. If you were looking at this in radians, it would go really 0 pi, 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi. So it's just going to have an integer in front of it. 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, negative 1 pi, negative 2 pi, and so forth. So if you think about it, when you're looking at these trig functions, some of them are going to be the same. Like, since the tangent is y over x, the secant is r over x, so these two things should have the same angles where they're undefined because it's asking the same question. So you reason this out the same way. The secant would be undefined the same place as the tangent, so that would be 90 degrees, 270 degrees, and so forth. And of course, you got your negative angles following exactly the same pattern. Okay, so you've already figured that out. So tangent and cotangent and secant go together. Okay, cotangent and cosecant, since they both have a divide by y in the denominator, they should have the same answer to where they're undefined. So we can just write down what we got from cotangent, which is 0 degrees, 180 degrees, and so forth. And you can write these things in terms of pi also. Want to know how to do that as well. Okay, so that's it. That's actually a fairly important thing to know how to do is when you get in higher math classes, like when I teach calculus or calculus 2 or something like that, students a lot of times just they come across, they have to figure out what the cotangent of something is, or they got to figure out where something's undefined. And you do a lot of this work in your head, but the one thing you can't forget is those definitions of the trig functions. Okay, so I'm not going to have you do a problem on that. That will wrap that up, and hopefully this helps you to be able to easily find the trig values of quadrantal angles. All right, good luck.